Hello and welcome.
Last time we ended up covering the first 4 main TGIF shows that all took a trip to the Walt Disney World Resort. However, like I mentioned in the last video, that was only part 1 of this conversation. There's so many more shows, past and more recently past, that also took a rite of passage to the most magical place on earth. Generally speaking, sitcoms in the 90s for the most part featured middle-class privileged sunshine and rainbow stereotypes of families, but there was one family constantly living the opposite lifestyle.
Roseanne's Disney World episode did air in 1996 and it actually aired before Boy Meets World, but as you can tell compared to the last 4 shows that I talked about, Boy Meets World, Family Matters, Step by Step, and Full House were a lot more happy-go-lucky people, and Roseanne was not.
Roseanne catered to the blue-collar, lower-class family dynamic that was never prioritized commonly on TV prior.
Now, to be fair, I never watched Roseanne growing up, so unlike the aforementioned shows that I did watch growing up and basically seen most of the episodes, if not all the episodes throughout the years, this was the first time that I was really experienced the world of Roseanne and the characters of Roseanne.
It's technically a 2-part episode similar to Full House, Family Matters, and Step by Step, but the big difference with Roseanne is part 1 is strictly the planning and travel towards Disney World. The second episode is the only one that takes place at the Magic Kingdom and Epcot, respectively.
I do love that they have the old Epcot mat on the plane, but that brought up a lot of questions. Could you do that back then? Could you get park maps when you weren't in the park? Was that a thing, or was that legitimately fantasized for the show?
The way they get down to Disney is due to Dan quitting his job and getting a check for all his unused vacation time, and Roseanne is wanting the family to get together for their first family vacation at Disney World. Of course, everyone else has their own priorities. There's very few minor subplots that happen. Dan is excited to drink beer around the World Showcase.
What's a yard, bloke?
Well, that's one right there.
I've died and gone to England.
Becky's husband keeps getting jealous of her meeting Disney characters.
Hey.
Who was that guy?
And as an extra side note, it's so interesting to point out some of the small details. Look at all these random characters just chilling on Main Street. Johnny Galecki plays David, who is Darlene's boyfriend, but from my personal watching experience, I'm much more familiar with his portrayal of Leonard from The Big Bang Theory.
I don't know. Sometimes your movements are so lifelike, I forget you're not a real boy.
It's interesting seeing his character on this show and how it seems so similar to Leonard years later.
One more word out of you and there'll be no more rides for you either, pal, if you know what I mean.
You know, DJ, I think it would be fun to just spend the rest of the day with Darlene.
Again, this is the only Roseanne episode that I've seen, so I can't make assumptions, but as a first impression, it's a small observation. David is much more excited to be in Disney, but Darlene seems to be the black cat archetype compared to his golden retriever behavior, and doesn't want to do anything until she meets Pooh.
Space Mountain, here we come.
After that, she literally spends the rest of the day with him.
This is my parents' number in Lanford, and this is my dorm room in Chicago. And let's not make this one of those things, you know, where we say we'll call each other and then we don't, you know.
Outside of them riding Big Thunder Mountain, there are no rides shown and barely any park outside of what we see.
Also, when was this supposed to be filmed? Because everyone is wearing long jackets and sweatshirts and cold weather clothing in Florida. But it's not just Roseanne's family, it is a lot of people. So I'm going to be with the assumption that it was supposed to take place in early January/February months, because otherwise Florida's warm for majority of the year.
In terms of the sitcoms, this one is definitely the least used in Disney territory. Next up is Sabrina. For those not familiar, Sabrina the Teenage Witch was a series where Sabrina finds out that she's part witch on her 16th birthday and has to go through a series of tests throughout the series in order to pass her witch training. Her 2 aunts, Hilda and Zelda, help her go through her training alongside Salem, who's a former criminal trapped in the cat's body.
Sabrina the Teenage Witch, I was a huge fan of. I watched all the episodes by the time it came out, and of course in reruns as well. This one I am very familiar with.
The way she gets down to Disney is through her witch tutor, giving her an assignment that requires her to create a potion to turn her into an animal using tropical plants.
Last trip to Florida.
We're going to Disney World!
Because this was filmed in 1998, they focused on the newest park, Animal Kingdom.
I can't believe we're here. This is so exciting.
Even though they don't advertise bluntly like they did in the past couple of sitcoms where you're driving by the resort, I could still tell that this was Coronado Springs that they stayed at, which I believe at the time was probably the closest resort to Animal Kingdom. Not sure about that, but I do know with my research that Animal Kingdom Lodge was built after the park was open. So Animal Kingdom Lodge, which would have made the most sense for them to stay at while they were promoting Animal Kingdom, was not in existence yet.
Hijacks ensue once they were down in the park. Sabrina is focused on foraging for plants. Her aunt Zelda wants to dig in the boneyard for fossils and ends up finding a human bone who gets turned into a caveman, while Hilda wants to just go on some rides and enjoy Disney.
I really love that even though they only featured Animal Kingdom, they still got to get that Disney marketing in there and the Disney merchandise marketing in there. Also, this is a very interesting time to talk about this. I love how much they reference the Boneyard and Dino Land USA, and this just makes me want it to stay around even more. Because as we know, I'm a very avid fan of Dino Land USA, and because of the potential changes of Animal Kingdom currently happening, we don't know if it's going to be in existence that much longer. So fingers crossed, I hope it stays. And unfortunately, if it doesn't stay, at least we have it referenced in many, many things, including the Sabrina episode.
The other subplots going are focused on Sabrina's friends and enemies. Libby, the popular cheerleader, keeps trying to steal Harvey, Sabrina's boyfriend, away, and Hilda ends up overhearing that plan and ends up zapping Harvey onto the Kilimanjaro safari trucks as a tour guide, so he'll be separated away from Libby.
Karabuni! I'm Harvey, and I'll be your guide as we tour the Harambe Wildlife Reserve. Please keep your arms inside the vehicle and enjoy the ride.
Valerie, who's Sabrina's friend, ends up being asked to hang out with Libby, and they go on a few rides together. Also, take note that they reference the short-lived Discovery Island boats.
That was so scary. I know. I was sure we were going to crash and die at the Dragon Rocks. Really? You covered it well with your screaming.
Still wish I got to experience that ride. Later on, back at the hotel room, Valerie thinks Sabrina's animal potion is iced tea, and she ends up accidentally spilling it on her and Libby, and they get turned into zebras. In the end, everything is all cleared up. Valerie and Libby get turned back into their human selves. The caveman becomes a cast member, and Sabrina passes her test.
What's really funny was this was the last sitcom that went to Disney World within the 20th century, because the other two that are on my list happened within the last 10 years. And what's even funnier about that now is if you've seen my Walt Disney World Easter Parade video, Caroline Rhea was the last host of the Easter Parade, and they made a whole reference to that.
No, we'll probably become some Disney trivia game. Who are the last hosts of the Walt Disney World Happy Easter Parade of the second millennium?
Caroline Rhea and Dale Hughley.
Immortality.
So I love that not only was she the last host of the 20th century Walt Disney World Easter Parade, but also ultimately the last Walt Disney World Easter Parade televised, but she was also part of the last sitcom that went to Disney World in the 20th century as well. Making history over here. Ironically, I also really never watched the middle, but seeing it throughout reruns and just on television, skipping through it, I've seen bits and pieces of it throughout the years, but I never really sought out to watch it. However, saying that, this show is the most personal experience that I have out of the list.
A similar family dynamic to Roseanne, where it's a struggling family trying to stay afloat in the Midwest, but with more positivity compared to Roseanne's family. I also forgot to mention that because this was 2014, they were heavily promoting the magic bands everywhere. Also, remember when Disney was trying to push all the different social media tags as well, like hashtag DisneySide?
Back in 2014, I was doing the Disney College program, and I remember finding out that they were going to be filming in the parks. And as you can tell, I love the film industry. It's something that I want to be able to be within as a legitimate career. So, of course, my budding college self was trying to get on the set and trying to help to get to know connections and know people so I could somehow get my foot in the door. And of course it didn't happen, but I remember constantly trying to find out where they were filming. At the time, I was working at American Adventure in Epcot, and their trailers were in the back parking lot that we'd walk by going to the job and going to our American Adventure Pavilion. So I would always walk by their trailers, but of course there was no people out, there was no one I could talk to, and I even ended up trying to call Disney cast hotlines or any numbers to talk to a cast member to be like, hey, is there any information about being an extra? No one would give me information, even though I was like, hey, I'm a cast member. I mean, it's a good thing that I didn't get terminated trying to find this out. I was trying to be proactive on this. And of course, because I was working, I didn't get to be within the parks. And from what I remember afterwards is within the parks where they filmed at Magic Kingdom and Epcot, as a park guest, they had signs about being an extra. But I wasn't a park guest at the moment. I was just a working cast member. So I completely missed any opportunity to be an extra in the show. I would have loved to have been an extra in the show, but it was still an interesting personal experience because I know exactly when they filmed it. And I know exactly the week that they filmed because I was doing the spring program. And it ended up airing in the fall. So it was a quick turnaround time for their next season when they filmed the show.
It's also so interesting that they used this aerial shot during Halloween time when they filmed it in the spring. The main daughter, Sue, won a trip to Disney World, although once they arrive at the Magic Kingdom, it's shown that their tickets were supposed to be for Disneyland.
Wait, what? Disneyland? These tickets are for Disneyland?
You're telling me we drove for 2 days to the wrong park?
Another side note to explain, the family is known for having giant misfortune in life, and that's part of the humor of their show. Just like Roseanne, their first episode of the 2 parts is focused on them traveling down to the resort.
I made 14 different playlists for the drive. This one is the Disney Main Street Electrical Parade soundtrack. Isn't it amazing?
Okay, but the playlist thing is me because there's nothing better than listening to Disney music on the way down to Disney.
As well as some other irrelevant subplots outside of heading down to Disney. Both Frankie and Sue are determined to have a fun, positive experience for once, but in expected fashion, things continue to go wrong. Anytime their luck seems to change for the better, something else messes up their experience.
We also had a hotel.
Oh. The hotel that is featured within the show is the Grand Floridian, and it's one of the fanciest suites that they have, so it's literally the biggest advertisement of luxury that you could find.
In the mirror! Oh no, I think I'm gonna pass out again.
Look at this table! When I get rich, I'm gonna buy one of these and never use it.
Although they love staying in the Grand Floridian, like any normal person would be ecstatic about, they end up oversleeping and try to cram their last day in the parks. Just like with the rest of the shows, we end with a shot of them enjoying the fireworks, and it's a true happy family moment once more.
We're going to Disney World!
Blackish is the most recent of the sitcoms that they've shot at Disney World back in 2016. Once again, somewhere in the middle. I was familiar with the show. I never really watched the show, but I knew about it and I knew that it was on. But this was one of the first episodes that I really purposely sat down and watched.
Andre is excited to take the family on a VIP vacation experience to be able to show off to his cynical parents that he's made it in life. While the kids end up becoming insanely spoiled and ungrateful after they getting the VIP treatment, his parents and his wife, who's currently pregnant and not allowed to go on most of the rides.
Hey. Yes, I am actually pregnant.
That's awesome, congratulations. But unfortunately, Mama Bear, you're gonna have to sit this right out because of your cum in the oven.
Oh.
Keep talking about how they hate being there while clearly enjoying their time.
Some of the exits are gonna be right over
guys.
here.
There's a real exit right there.
Yep, that's one of them.
Oh no, parade's coming through. I don't know how this day could get any worse.
I don't either. It's horrible.
So hot.
Also, the biggest issue from this episode was the fact that they are going from park to park to park trying to find an exit. The logistics of going from Animal Kingdom to Epcot without finding an exit drove me insane. It's Full House all over again. Honestly, this episode was probably the worst episode to watch only because of the plot line. These kids are legitimately spoiled enough to the fact that they're complaining about Expedition Everest being a 25-minute wait.
And this line is only 25 minutes.
25 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
A 25-minute wait. I would love a 25-minute wait for any of the rides. That is nothing. And I understand that was a point to show how ungrateful and spoiled they got from the VIP treatment, but it drove me insane watching it. I was so angry. Overall, it was so interesting going back and looking at all the similarities from all the shows. For most of the shows, Splash Mountain was a high feature. Roseanne did not feature that, and clearly Sabrina didn't either, because Sabrina didn't go to Magic Kingdom. They were only in Animal Kingdom.
In the end, it's such an interesting experience seeing not only the progression of the shows that went to Walt Disney World, but knowing that there's a much deeper discussion if you were to talk about how sitcoms as a whole changed over the last few decades. It's clear to compare how insanely different Full House and Blackish, the first and last show to take that Disney vacation respectively, are from one another. And it's also interesting to see how the plots of sitcoms have changed so much in this short amount of time. It's been almost a decade since a show took a trip down to Orlando. However, currently the sitcoms that are active on the networks wouldn't fit within the Disney bubble. Long gone are the happy families dealing with very privileged yet hilarious conflicts, and instead a lot of the sitcoms feature teachers who work together at a school like Abbott Elementary, a group of vampires living in Staten Island like What We Do in the Shadows, which, personal opinion, is one of the greatest shows ever made. Or, ironically enough, The Conners, which is a present-day spinoff from Roseanne, and it's still on the air today. It would be a complete dream for It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia to get a Disney World episode, but since it's a very, very adult satirical sitcom, it would never happen. Although it's under the Disney ownership now, but a girl can still dream. If anyone wants to point me in the right direction towards the fan fiction written about the cast going to Disney, that would be fantastic.
So from this point on, those are all of the sitcoms that went to Disney World. There are still sitcoms that did Disneyland. As I mentioned earlier, I still have never been to Disneyland, so I really don't know anything about the parks outside of the media that I've been able to see about it and just different articles and learning about the history of it. But I don't have any first-hand personal experience in those parks to compare how accurate the shows portrayed them. Maybe in the future though, I would love to do that. As always, I hope you have a magical day and I will see you real soon.